Welcome to Telltales. I'm Mike Nicoletti. Every week, along with my co-hosts Jason Wallace and Hunt Lawrence, we bring you the Cash Flow Memo. Get it at telltales.us. Welcome to a special edition of Telltales. This is our 10-ish surprises episode. Last year, we made 12 predictions of things that would be unlikely, but if they did happen, would be impactful. On this episode, we're going to go through that list and add a few new ones. So stay tuned.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
We're going to go over the predictions made this time last year, and I don't think we'll be too embarrassed. On oil, where I predicted Saudis would go to market share, they didn't, fortunately. And I spent a fair amount of time today checking sources, and I don't think that market share is too likely this year either. A lot's going to depend on Iran and whether or not sanctions get reimposed on Iran. They do have a forecast for OPEC plus Russia and the others to start to add 180,000 barrels a day per month, which could be construed as being market share, but they keep postponing that because if they start to do that, it definitely would impact the price. I'm thinking that they will be able to do that, but they'll only do that if we, the United States, impose sanctions on Iran. And if that happens, there'll be room to add that additional production. So I would say that's not market share. We were wrong in 24, but hopefully we'll continue to be wrong in 25, I guess is what the current prediction is. But on the second one is easy. If we predicted that Biden would block new LNG projects, and they did. And I think the Trump administration will free that up. Number three was that there'd be some problem which would cause the Federal Reserve to come to the rescue. We were wrong in 24. Hopefully we'll continue to be wrong in 25. Number four, which is the Treasury bond auction fail. It didn't, but on the other hand, the 10-year rate continues to move up. I'm be comfortable with the prediction that it won't be a Treasury bond auction failure, but the 10-year rate will continue to move higher, even though the Fed funds rate continues to come down, at least 50 basis points. Let's say the Fed funds rate comes down 50 basis points and the 10-year bond starts to trade. It's currently 460, starts to trade significantly higher, maybe even into the 510, 520 range. What I don't understand while we're on that point is how you could have a 5%, 520, something like that, 10-year bond, and have the Fed funds rate come down some more. Why that wouldn't be arbitraged away. But one of the things that might happen is that the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department would discourage people from doing that by imposing capital limitations on how banks and non-bank investors are able to borrow. If they could put out some type of regulatory process where they say, look, in this particular trade, you can't borrow more than 2 times the amount of money you have up, which would keep an arbitrage from happening to lower the 10-year bond rate. Like you're the person on the next one that Google paying Apple for default search status. It seems to me that that's a little more likely to happen rather than as compared to this time last year as part of some kind of a settlement here.
Yeah, so this is the antitrust case against Google, and one of the proposed remedies is that Google would be disallowed from paying Apple the fees that it currently pays to be default search status for the Safari browser on the iPhone and on the Safari browser on the Mac. So it's definitely in the cards. So remember, that's $20-ish billion, big chunk of Apple's cash flow.
Jason, what will Microsoft do? Will they ask for equal status, or what do you think will happen?
I think they continue pushing with AI's powered search. compete in a different space rather than trying to fight for that business. I see them as, and I think they made public statements about forward thinking that a GPT search product is going to supplant traditional search. It's where the puck's moving to.
I think Google, by putting AI capability into its search product, is going to hold off OpenAI or Microsoft or anyone else who wants to try to, or Perplexity wants to try to take some of Google's market share from search.
To some extent, yeah, I think it does, but I think it's a natural evolution to be conversational with it rather than a search bar and you're just typing some query terms. I think most people's interaction with Google is not asking full-fledged detailed questions. I think it's you type in terms and then you're doing the searching, through the top results that come back. So I see the product having a much more conversational aspect, and it's probably voice enabled. That will come this year, and you'll have a conversation with your phone, and it'll provide answers to you.
Mike, you on the same page there?
Well, I think what's going to happen on the payments made to Apple for default search status, I don't think they're going to just walk away from $20 billion cash flow. So I think they set up a structure which the courts will be okay with, where no matter what search engine it is, it has to pay some sort of revenue share if they want to have access to the browser. This also creates a pathway for Chrome to be spun off as an independent entity, which is one of the proposals as well. So I think the net impact of all this is not a reduction in Apple's cash flow by $20 billion. But the second piece of this conversation that Jason's brought up is that all the new innovation will not be a new or better search. It will be a completely different approach to advertising. And search was a really great way to meet the consumer where they were. When the consumer was actively looking for something in the world, search was the right tool to find it. What's changed today is the answer to a question is very easily found with these tools, with ChatGPT and the new version of Google Search. You get right to the answer. So with that data and the data that we get about people, the data that Meta has, for example, on you, they are very well positioned to provide the user with maybe exactly what they're looking for. Now, the question is, can you put that in front of them at the time when they're ready to be acceptant of that information? So there's a reason why Facebook and Meta are such great advertising properties, because it's a lean back consumption. It's almost like TV, right? Except you can track the data and you can go in and make a purchase right there on your phone. So the challenge for all of these ChatGPT-like products is, I don't think the use case for the user is that they are actively in a place where they're looking for something to purchase. They're looking to answer a question. And the challenge for all those services is to provide them, the user, with an opportunity to make a purchase at the time when they want to. And I think that whole circle is not fully connected yet. And it'll probably take another year or so until we have some really compelling new ways to utilize these tools and generate advertising dollars.
Is it possible that these tools, because as Jason says, they're conversational, makes it hard to charge for advertising? Does it mean that these things will have to be subscription?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'd argue that no, they don't. But you have to recognize that when you're collecting data and when you're providing an advertisement to someone, may not be concurrent.
Right.
So this is just my hypothesis on the way all of this should probably work out. But to beat something like a targeted advertisement when people are actively looking for something, that is very hard to do. And you really, to be better than that, you probably need to know what the person wants before they necessarily know they want it, and put it in front of them at the right time. And that's something that Meta is just better at than anybody else.
Yeah, not to belabor this one, but I've been thinking of it as the transition that Meta went through with Facebook at the time, from desktop to mobile, and their margins took a big hit when they were trying to figure out how to advertise on mobile. But they got there, and it just took a little bit of time.
Right. About an edge model for Apple, Jason. I mean, is that an enhanced Siri, or in Amazon's case, an enhanced Alexa, or what do you expect next year?
Yeah, so it didn't. We predicted that Apple would implement the edge model. They didn't do that, but they've talked around it. So the iPhone 16 is built with the capabilities of allowing that. So this will be a language model that runs natively on the phone rather than today. Every time you make a request, it goes to a cloud server somewhere and provides you the answer. So they've released the hardware capability. They have not caught up with on the software side. So I think that's a 2025 prediction now.
Right. And actually opening it up to developers, it is not officially stated that that's the case, but it is there's a lot of people that are predicting this that are kind of in the weeds on Apple and future Apple software development.
Right.
And the question is this going to be something that's great, or is this going to be like a dud product that none of the developers want to use?
And will you sell more iPhone 17s because of its availability?
Right. Because today the jury is that Google has gotten way far ahead on the phone because of the software. And so Apple's now in catch-up mode, if you will.
Right.
People that thought they would never use anything other than an iPhone are starting to question that decision.
There's one of them on the call right now.
Oh. Oh, so maybe that's the surprise is Jason, or one person on this call switches to a Google phone.
The Tesla's built-in voice assistant is the Tesla voice assistant going to be competitive with Siri and Alexa, or what's going on here?
This is actually really pertinent because they released an update in the last few days that can do all sorts of cool things, like open the trunk and open the frunk and do all this stuff. This was a very good prediction on Jason's part, and really kind of just got in here the last few weeks.
Yeah, made it right before New Year's.
And more of this will happen in 25. You think, Jason?
Oh, absolutely. I think you'll control most things in the car, and then if Elon's robotaxi enabled vehicle does come out next year and it doesn't have a steering wheel, I think that's probably your primary way to interact with the vehicle.
One of the other things we said here is that their autonomy, FSD gets greenlit by the Department of Transportation. That's under discussion, I guess, or some people being drafted to be part of the Trump administration have talked about that. How will states react if responsibility for autonomous driving is made federal?
It logically makes sense that it would be efficient to have a nationwide framework in the same way that we have nationwide road signs and whatnot. But the implementation of the rules is delegated to the states. So could you see a world where the framework for regulating self-driving vehicles is nationwide and then implemented by the states? I'd guess that's probably the most likely path, but Trump did say that is absolutely one of the things that they intend to do. And I guess to extend that, he also said something about I forget what he called it, vertical takeoff human transportation vehicles or something like that. The concept being like small, moving 2 to 4 persons, drones fly. So it would be a surprise if we also get some sort of a government framework around that as well.
Right.
Okay, so number 9 was that it would be a surprise if the uptake of AI products was insufficient to justify continued expansion of these data centers. And we've obviously seen that data center expansion has continued to increase. Now, the other end of this is that has there been enough revenue to justify all of this build out? And as of today, I'd say that answer is no, but the expectation is that there will be revenue there in the future. And that is why the big tech companies are spending so much on this infrastructure.
You said 10 surprises, and we actually had 12. The last 3 are all health related. And number 10 is a drug design with AI. And I mean, that's happening all over, right, Jason? I mean, in addition to writing code, probably doing drug development is one of the principal early users of AI.
It is, and there's a couple of platforms now, AI-powered platforms that pharma companies are licensing in order to do some of this work. So there's a lot of drugs in works that are, co-designed with AI. And I don't know if our prediction was that it would be approved this year or not, but certainly they're moving through. I believe there's a number of them in phase 2 clinical trials right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to back it out because so much of the early work on protein folding is now done with AI that you could almost say anything that's in clinical trials now probably utilize some of these protein folding tools. So it might have been too vague of a prediction because you can't. It requires people plus AI to do any of this stuff.
Yeah. Number 11, where you say generative AI replaces influencers. I mean, I guess the influencer that has the most impact is Elon Musk. Don't see him being replaced by generative AI
I don't know. I actually have a theory on that because he tweets a lot more than anybody that does as much as he does would be physically capable. So either he has a team of people that are tweeting for him, or he's got some sort of AI that is doing a lot of that work for him.
Donald Trump fits in that category too.
Yeah. And apparently the 1,500-page continuing resolution, that was pulled apart by AI, which shows that lobbyists and legislators trying to hide things by having very long bills are going to have to cope with AI being used to, have in 20 or 30 minutes where they're trying to hide provisions in pages and pages of legislation.
Yeah.
Number 12, I don't know what a Silico experiment is.
Oh, yeah. So the prediction was that the FDA would expand the use of in silico experiments to accelerate the drug approval process. And just to bring us back to last January, I was at JP Morgan at the time, so I was spending a lot of time thinking about drug development and AI. And basically what's happening with the protein folding models, for example, is that we're just getting a better understanding of biology. We've sort of been very good at programming physics for a long time, but programming biology has not been as easy. But that is changing now because of a lot of these artificial intelligence tools. So with that, over the past, call it close to a decade, there has been more, they call them in silico experiments, but essentially computer modeling of biological systems that are used to help them determine a course of action in developing a drug, help them predict what's going to happen before they actually put it in people. Because with with any of these things, you want to know the answer before you actually spend all the money to put it into people. But as those systems get better, you could absolutely see a world where certain parts of the drug development process are replaced with or augmented by these in silico experiments. And the key area that I pointed out last January was a lot of the animal models don't really, well, they have shortcomings when, something might work in an animal model, but not work in a human model for many reasons. So my thought was that was the first area that might be of use. Now, nothing happened this year, but I guess this is one of those things you can push to next year, or the year after, or the year after.
Yeah. We're about to run out of time, and we've gone through the 12 from last year. Let's expand the list. Jason, you go first.
Okay, I have a couple thoughts. So I'll pick my favorite one, is that a private company achieves nuclear fusion ignition. So it's been done once by the U.S. National Laboratory in Livermore, and that is more energy comes out of a nuclear fusion reaction than was put into to create it. And I think a private company achieves that same milestone this coming year.
Yeah, but other than R&D getting approval of your people in your field and whatnot, how likely is fusion, a commercial fusion project, or what would the timing be on commercial fusion?
Well, the joke is that it's always 20 years.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I think it's closer to 20 years than 10, but I think it probably is achievable within the 20 years at this point where it hasn't been in the past.
Wait, so this time it's different.
Yeah, this time is different. I mean, progress has been made, right? And last year was the first time that we've actually had a successful test of this type of fusion reaction, and so it's achievable. The asterisk on the test last year was that a lot more energy was used in setting up the experiment, not just these lasers for that one, not just the energy that the lasers put into the reaction, but there was cooling and all the other stuff that goes along with it used a lot more energy that came out. So it wasn't a net energy positive. So there's still a lot of work. I think the tech industry is hoping that it comes sooner, because this would be a clean, limitless source of power for AI data centers, and big tech is putting a lot of venture money into these kind of projects, but I think it still is a ways off.
What about RFK Jr.'s impact on the pharmaceutical business? Jason, how? First of all, don't know whether he can get confirmed, but assuming he is confirmed, what would the impact be?
So my big prediction there was more so in the food industry, and I think he throws the food supply chain into chaos by pushing through a ban on corn syrup and food products. So a similar type ban that you see in Canada, Mexico, almost anywhere else in the world. And so many of our food products are created with corn syrup rather than sugar for cost reasons. And our supply chain for the industrial food supplies is built around that. And I think that goes in, it's thrown in upheaval.
We have a few minutes left. Why don't we give you the third choice?
Okay, I've got two. So maybe we're gonna have 16 this year. I have China. This again surprises. China reunifies Taiwan, and the second one is we have the first $1 billion one-person company.
This is the year for both, huh?
Yeah.
I guess we promised to talk about expense reduction below the 7 trillion. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say by the time we get to this time next year on an annualized basis, we'll go from a $7 trillion estimate for the fiscal year we're in. When we get to next December, we will be talking about 6.5 trillion. In other words, we'll save 500 billion. 500 billion isn't the 2 trillion that Ramaswamy and Musk say there is their target, but it would be a heck of an achievement. And I think that would have to come without too much reduction in Social Security, kind of modest reduction in healthcare spending, but just kind of paring back a lot of the stuff that Biden administration was doing. And I hope I'm not optimistic with that prediction, but we'll see how it comes out. I think next week we'll be back to Wednesdays, and I guess it's about time to go through page by page and do our prediction of which company on each page will have the best increase in free cash flow. And with that, everyone have a good year, stay well and be healthy, and we'll get back next week to meeting Wednesday afternoons. Take care.
The views expressed on this podcast are the host alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the hosts nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.